Well, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Wow, we're a restless bunch this morning. Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist in Medfield. Welcome to all of you who are streaming in from home as well. We're glad you can be here. Any visitors, we hope you will join us. Well, we hope everyone will join us after the service for a social hour downstairs. We'll have snacks and conversation. This congregation first gathered in 1651 in this historic meeting house, was built in 1789 on the unceded ancestral lands of the Nipmuc. Here we search for truth and understanding. Here we celebrate life and we contemplate its mysteries. Here we share healing and wholeness. So whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, we welcome you to this congregation.
Our chalice lighting this morning is by Gordon B. McKeeman, and it's called Deep Calls Unto Deep, Joy's Call Unto Joy. Deep calls unto deep, joy's call unto joy. Light calls unto light. Let the kindling of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of love, of peace, of hope. And as our flame lights another, nor grows the less, we pledge ourselves to be bearers of the light wherever we are.
This morning as we gather, bring who you are as you enter this congregation. Bring your best self, your struggling self. Bring your mistakes and your triumphs. Bring your shortcomings and your commitment to good. Bring yourself here and open your heart to beauty, to truth, to the door that is always open. Here in this congregation, we are trying to walk together on the peaceful journey, trying to hammer out division and hatred and all that separates us from one another. We try, fall short, but held in love, we try again. We come together this morning as a congregation to bow our heads in prayer, raise our voices in song, to remember our promises and vow to live by them once again. Come, let us worship together. All right, well, our opening hymn this morning is Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Before we sing, I just want to give you a little intro to that hymn. It's based on a poem by Rumi, 13th century Persian Sufi poet. The language in that poem is almost identical, except in our hymnal, there's one line that's really important. So important, it's actually the title of my sermon, so I thought we could include it. It's often sung along with this. So if you'll notice, you turn to 188 in your gray hymnal. There are those, I believe, 5 lines. After we sing that through, we're just going to sing the phrase, "You've broken your vows 1,000 times. You've broken your vows 1,000 times. You've broken your vows 1,000 times." So we'll sing that 3 times, and then we'll repeat what's actually printed. So what's in your hymnal? We'll do that 3 times, back to what's in your hymnal, and we're done. Let's try it. Quiet our minds and hearts now as we enter into this sacred time of prayer and meditation. Side with love. It's a phrase you hear a lot in Unitarian Universalist circles. Side with love. Blanche so eloquently reminded us love must begin with ourselves, honoring who we are, turning off that inner editor that is so known to criticize, the voice within ourselves. We are lovable beings, we are loving beings. Remember to tap into that part of ourselves, which is the core of who we are. For then that love can emanate into others. The places of our world filled with hatred and anger and frustration. As people of faith, let us side with love. It's often hard to find that love, some of what's happening in our world. Whose side to be on. Help us, so Holy One, divine mystery of the universe, help us to find our center. We side with that love. We know we're on the right track. Let's hold all this in our hearts as we enter into a time of silent meditation. Well, now I'd invite forward Louise Rachin for the morning's poem.
This morning's reading is called When Covenants Break, and it's by Francis Kosher. When covenant breaks, hope flickers and doubt seeps in like floodwaters through the cracks in the basement. While the many return to the comforts of their congregation, we are left staring at the door that has slammed in our faces, wondering if we should walk back in and why. Our faith demands growth, demands inclusion of those who are never like us. Whatever side of that us you fall on, but words can so easily be cast aside in the moment when they matter. Covenant is a promise that we will work together on a team that we didn't choose. Doing group work, we like the idea far more than the thing itself. It is the radical answer to a radical goal, at least. On paper, our faith does not give us answers to what to do when covenant breaks. When we see that some would rather cling to their patriarchy and their white supremacy would make problem people of the whistleblowers and hateful radicals of those who just asking for rights would pretend that the promises of covenant mean nothing unless the person is just like you. But then, standing in that cold with the door slammed in front of you, something shifts. Covenant is a promise between the people of this faith, but it is also a promise between ourself and our faith, and sometimes nothing takes more faith than staying. Choosing to speak of your broken heart to those you are brave enough to face, change to stay in dialogue and have those hard conversations you never wanted to have, and choosing to be angry rather than walk away, all of these are holding truth to your promises. When covenant breaks, we are sent back to the beginning again like a toddler on their time out, to think about what just happened, or a minister on sabbatical called to remember that we fell in love, what we fell in love with in the first place. This ship is not sinking. It is only rocked by the violent waves of oppression, and everyone has contributed to that oppression of someone, if not everyone. May that humility keep us listening even when our own pain hasn't been heard yet, even when our relationships are shattering like crystals falling to cold stone, even when all you need is a hug and your community won't open its arms yet.
Thank you, Louise. Has anybody here ever fixed a toilet? Well, Friday morning, when I was supposed to be home writing this sermon, I was fixing a toilet. Thought this would be a pretty simple job. Those of you who know the inner workings of that tank on your toilet, there was that slow dripping. And then what happens is then it wants to refill again. That was getting annoying for a few days. Oh, that's easy. That's an easy job. That little rubber gasket over the valve in the toilet, the flush valve, I think it's called. Just go to Danny's Hardware. Love it. Danny is right down the street. This guy is sort of like my Sam Malone from Cheers. He's like the bartender. I can hang out with Danny, and he walks me through the aisles. He gets me exactly what I need, and we talk a little bit about our lives. So that's what I was doing at 9 o'clock Friday morning. Well, I was not writing this sermon. bring it home, put in that brand new shiny little rubber valve, and it didn't work. It didn't fit. So then about an hour later, I was back hanging out with my buddy Danny, and he said, well, what you need is you have to replace this part. Well, it was the one and only part in my toilet that I have never fixed before. The other parts I have replaced. This part I hadn't. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. To replace the valve on the toilet, David, you're looking at me like you know. You actually have to remove the entire tank. You know, the big part. You got to detach that. Oh, terrible. Terrible. I had old rusty screws, that Hemingway built or something. I don't know. And it was disgusting. The inside, gross. It stunk. Eventually, I got these rusty screws loosened, and oh my goodness, and all the dried up urine that nobody knew was under disgusting. I'm in the thick of it now. There's water on the floor. You eventually get that tank off. Put it back on. And there's more dripping. This time not from inside the tank, but onto my floor. I had to go back, see Danny, get another rubber gasket, the one that seals the bottom. Anyhow, long story short, this was what I thought was going to be a 20-minute fix, was now a 5-hour job. It was not fun. After that process, now here it is. Lila is home from school, 3 o'clock. My window to write my sermon is gone. So I thought I'd just tell you the story. Good? This meets your needs? Good, I hope. But then, it dawned on me that what we're talking about this morning, and when covenant breaks, that hard work when we damage relationships, whether those are marriages, friendships, or perhaps even the bigger covenant we have with our children. That's a covenant that doesn't require a ceremony, but a literal birthing into this world, one that is not easily dissolved. It can't ever be dissolved. These relationships mean the world to us. And we will always, as human beings, mess up. We will break our vows, whether that's not living by your word, not doing what you said you would do. There's more severe things that we can do. Commit adultery. Leave someone when they are most needing you. Abandon someone you love. Criticize when you meant to compliment. There are a million ways we break our vows. This poem by Rumi, as we mentioned, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. As he writes, this is a translation by Coleman Barks. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vow 1,000 times, come yet again. I'm wondering if we could all sing that through one more time as we did earlier. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. You've broken your vows 1,000 times. You've broken your vows 1,000 times. Broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours an important refrain to remember this Valentine's Day when we express our love. It's important to remember that we all make mistakes. As we delve deeper into our relationships, we need to ask ourselves when we're willing to apologize and when we're willing to forgive. And sometimes the answer to that is we're not. We're not. Sometimes relationships do end. This Valentine's Day, it is time to renew your vows to whoever you love and decide who you want to be in your life and who most values you or who you most value. One of the hardest things to do is to apologize for the wrongs that you've committed to those you care the most about. My colleague, Reverend Gretchen Haley, writes, as a child growing up Catholic, my sense was that we should give away forgiveness like candy at Halloween, freely and readily to anyone who comes asking. As an adult Unitarian Universalist, however, I've realized that forgiveness is a lot more complicated and challenging than that image would imply. What should we ask of those who have hurt us before we offer our forgiveness, if anything? Must someone seek your forgiveness in order for you to forgive them? What if they can't? What if they won't? What about self-forgiveness? Is there a point where something or someone is beyond forgiveness? What about forgiveness of a group, of a community, an institution, of life itself? Forgiveness is connected to memory and time. It asks us to engage our feelings about something in the past in order to change our experience in the present and then to move into the future. Forgiveness is an act of vulnerability, both from the one seeking forgiveness and the one offering, as it reveals the risks of trying to love in an imperfect world. How do we forgive? That's something I've struggled with my whole life. How do we forgive? The person I have the hardest time forgiving is myself for all those stupid things I've done, especially to those I care the most about. And you know, this work of forgiveness, this work of taking a vow, another word for that is covenant, the covenant we make. I think you've heard me say that this year we have a new right relations team that is working to create a congregational covenant, a relationship that means a lot to us. Those of us here in this room, those of us who are at home, those of us who we love with all our hearts. And what agreements will we make amongst ourselves on how to be together? How will we be in right relationship? And important and critical to understanding this work is that as much as we would like to believe, we are not a family. This is a different relationship. That's a very important distinction in a congregation. Families, there's a sense of unconditional love. My child could do anything. I would love her forever. Anything. But same is not true for any of you. Someone in this congregation misbehaves and does something terrible, that person might need to leave for the sake of the congregation. You can imagine in your own mind where would be the edges of that. That would be different for all of us. But congregations, to remain healthy, do make promises together. How we'll be together. How we'll forgive one another. How we'll say sorry, right? And then where the boundaries of that are. Our Right Relations team, which is currently Darlene Lewis, Wes Sutton, Rebecca Stevenson, and myself, we are working to sort of draft that, and we'll be looking for your feedback on that. Because the thing is, the reality is that disagreements here at First Parish or any congregation will always be there. There will be disagreements. Who we are, where we want to go. You know, we have big things on the horizon. For anyone who was here with the Stewardship for Us weekend. There's big things we're talking about, we're wanting to do. There will likely, predictably, be disagreements on which things we want to do or not do. That's normal, that's healthy, and that's to be expected. There are disagreements big and small. You all know that much better than I. Many of you have been here for decades. I've only been in my fifth year. So I do want to share with you some words by the Reverend Nancy McDonald in General Assembly, the UU General Assembly in 2016. She was talking about this, and I want to share this with you. For as long as two or more have gathered in the name of the Spirit, those two or more have fought some fake fights. You remember perhaps the classic wedding reading from Corinthians, which says, "If I speak in the tongues of mortals or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I'm nothing." That letter from the Apostle Paul to the early Christian community in Corinth has nothing whatsoever to do with weddings, actually. It's a letter from an overextended pastor with occasionally dubious judgment to a congregation whose leaders are in the constant state of fierce and unremitting conflict. The early Christians in the Corinth congregation were literally shouting their prayers like clanging cymbals over top of one another, trying to prove who was better at praying. Can you imagine? They were making faith into a contest, and whether he was saintly or not, Paul was having none of it. The collective wisdom of the ages reminds us that the stakes are high, and the ultimate prize we must reach out for in community is greater than the divisions and the trumped-up arguments that pull us apart. She goes on to say, there's a segue that you won't see coming. You know, in WrestleMania, when professional wrestlers have those fake fights, sometimes they really are at risk of getting hurt. And you know what they do? Before the muscle snaps or the bone breaks in that fake fight, what do? They tap out. They bang the mat. When the fake fight gets close to having real consequences, they tap out. And I tell you what, says Nancy McDonald, I'm tapping out right now. And I invite you to join me. I'm tapping out of every fake fight in our congregations and our movement about getting what I want or what you want or what we think we want, because the stakes are too high and we don't have time for fake fights anymore. She says a fake fight about the bylaws in the annual meeting is mostly often a carefully concealed real fight about the values that undergird our history coming into relationship with the values that may undergird our future. You can get past duking it out over the paint color in the church bathroom. We may encounter a pastoral window into the inner life of one of whose voice in the world seems increasingly powerless. And all lives matter. Yes, that one, chief among the fake fights out there, and cover conversations that distract from the work at hand and not about the slogan. More often than not, it's about our deep and abiding resistance to actually taking on the systemic white supremacy that eats at the heart of us and of our culture. He said that in 2016. I believe that was a year after this congregation had a bit of a kerfuffle about a Black Lives Matter sign, which was revisited 2.5 years ago, and a month and a half ago. For those of you who were at our semi-annual meeting, you know this was discussed. The reevaluation of our Black Lives Matter sign, which has hung outside for over 2 years. This is an example of a conflict, right? Now, some heard that conversation who might not have been privy to some of the conversations that had happened more behind the scenes as a group of white people sitting around for half an hour discussing whether they can say that Black Lives Matter because a handful of black people in Chicago said something they disagreed with. When maybe, in fact, we should be thinking about what we're going to do in the world rather than the sign we hang outside of our church. The thing that maybe wasn't clear to everyone who wasn't part of some of those behind-the-scenes discussions was less about removal of the sign. I want to just clear this up so everybody understands. Was the more nuanced issue that several in the community and some in the congregation have seen the sign, the black and white Black Lives Matter sign, as a logo for an organization, which is not First Parish. That's not our association. It's not our organization. Rather than what we intended to do at the time was to say a statement of belief. We believe that black people matter. So the nuance continues that, well, if you perhaps haven't worked on some of your own internal racism, it's a whole lot easier to say, well, somebody in Atlanta embezzled money through the Black Lives Matter organization chapter down there, and so therefore I don't have to think about racism. So that's part of the nuance that was behind this. So really this task force that has been created, there's several people in the congregation who are, I believe, starting that work soon to reevaluate all of our outward signs. We'll be looking at how we best express the social justice positions that we want to express. So, that being said, that is an example, and I use that as an example, as a very real conflict that is currently here. There are many. There will always be conflicts. We are talking about doing big things in the near future as a congregation, things that will cost money. And so clearly there will be conflicts. We have a right relations team that can help navigate us through that. We will have a congregational covenant that we can rest on to help us, bring us back. Even though we've broken that vow, even though we said that thing that upset someone, we are going to move forward. It's covenantal faith. There's so many things that we care so deeply about. And why I shared that passage from Nancy MacDonald was that these conflicts that we're having are far deeper than the surface. And that's really the heart of any of these conflicts, because there is something there in all of these, something that we care deeply about. And this place is a place that we care deeply about. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a member. But it's like that toilet. Until you start dismantling that tank, pulling out the innards, smelling the pee on the floor, and doing the work and seeing what's really buried there. Truly, I didn't know how I was going to do this thing until it was removed. Until you get real at what's underlying some of these things, it's hard to move forward. So I would invite you and encourage you to do the harder work. Not to do a false quick, I'm sorry, let's move on, an avoidance. But really reach out to one another and ask, what's at the heart of this? Why is this something you feel so strongly about? And how can I listen better to you so that even if I don't agree with you, I can understand where you're coming from? That's how we side with love as Unitarian Universalists. That's my prayer and my hope for our future. So to finish this off, Phil, we could do Come, Come, Whoever You Are one last time. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. You've broken your vows 1,000 times. Broken your vows 1,000 times. Broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of evening, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Amen. All right. right, well, please rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn, just as long as I have breath. Number 6. May be seated. I would invite forward Don Rolfe to introduce the offering.
So we've been discussing covenants this service. We covenant to ourselves as a congregation and to our deals with our membership, our activity, and with our financial support. And in that spirit, we hope you will give generously to support both this congregation and our support of the ideals given by the UU ministry.
It is our work shared with each other in covenants that creates and sustains this beloved community. We will soon leave this space, but our connection lives on in the directions we have chosen today. The light of this faith lives on in us together our hearts, in our minds, our bodies, our spirits. Go in peace. I'll now extinguish our chalice, but may its light and warmth stay in our hearts till we meet again. Here ends our worship. Let our service begin.